What is it?
They have done everything possible to destroy us.
What are they talking about? They obviously want to implement a brand new currency.
Themselves show that they are right, that they have done everything possible to destroy us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Reveal Report. I'm your host, George Iceman, and today is Friday night. It is Good Friday, and we thank you all for joining us. It is going to be a very big show. We are going to be joined by the one and only Mr. Tony Spera, who currently represents a major organization in Connecticut. He's an investigator and, of course, the son-in-law of the world-famous paranormal investigators, demonologists, the Warrens. He's the curator, and he takes care of the Warren Occult Museum. We're going to be discussing items that are haunted. We're going to be discussing items that are possessed, that have got some kind of negative energy used in occult rituals. We're going to go through these things and then discuss some of the things Tony may have done in separate investigations to clear the negative energy and to bring you some peace of mind. We're also going to discuss many other things, so we thank you for joining us. I noticed that in the chat, some people weren't getting their notifications. So we're going to ask you, if you're watching, to go to that bell and ring that bell where it'll notify you. Usually we're already at around 500-600 people. So it looks like no one is getting notified when we go live. So it looks like we might be shadow banned. So we apologize for the inconvenience. And once again, please ring that bell. That'll notify you, because they might be taking that off all our viewers. We welcome you once again to the show. And ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, Jessie Czebotar was supposed to be a special guest, really quickly dropping in. But we've been notified for the next little while, she's been taken off all the shows. So whether it's my show or somebody else's show, she will not be on any shows for a little while. Things are happening behind closed doors. She's been called up. So with that being said, I'd like to ask you all to join me in a prayer for Miss Jessie Czebotar. Heavenly Father, we thank you and praise you on this holy day as we come together to bring knowledge, wisdom, and darkness to light. We thank you for all that you do, and we ask you to protect us and Jessie Czebotar. Jessie has been a great influence, inspiring us and giving us great knowledge. We hope you surround her with angels, protect her in anything she's going through. Watch over her and help her in this time of need. We ask you to give us help, to give us sight of mind, to help us through this tough time, ladies and gentlemen. This is so important that we give thanks and praise to the Lord Jesus Christ. I thank you. I pray to you. It is a wild day, ladies and gentlemen, and we welcome you once again to the Reveal Report right here on the Real Deal Media. We have a big show today, and I must just remind everybody we are now featured on the Real Deal Media Spotify channel and 5 other podcast platforms. We welcome you to it. I'm George Iceman, and today, without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guest to the show, Mr. Tony Spera.
Hey,
Tony, how are you, sir?
Very well, George, and I'm honored to be on your show. It's an honor to be with you.
Really. You look fantastic. I don't want to say your age, but you look amazing.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'll look good in my coffin. But you know what? Yeah, it's been a wild ride these past several decades, but I remember meeting you back in
Yes.
2009,
Yes.
and how very, very gracious and professional you were back then. Even back then, that was what, 12 years ago or
12
so.
years ago. Yeah.
You were such a gracious host to Lorraine and I, and showed us all around Toronto and took us out to eat.
Yeah.
You were very, very, very nice to us, very polite and courteous, and we loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great honor, and I just want to share with everybody exactly what transpired, how it happened. I originally went to Lexington, Kentucky, after I arrived from LA because I had some paranormal experiences. So I was studying out there with a person named Patty Starr, and she was very light on everything, Tony. And I was talking about what about the occult and the darkness, these horrible, evil things that exist. And she said to me, I don't dabble in that or touch that. You probably want to discuss that or look to the queen of the paranormal, which was referred to Lorraine Warren. I said, how am I going to get a hold of Lorraine Warren? So, I living in Toronto, I poked around, calls, research, and somehow I found a number, contacted her. It was her. We had some talks and beautiful to talk to. And then I said, I'd love to bring you to Toronto. And she goes, yes, let's talk to my son-in-law, Tony. I got to speak to you, got to meet you, brought you here to do a lecture. We went to a few places, and it was such an amazing experience that so many people still didn't know the story of Lorraine and Tony. And when they found out exactly how deep and how long you've been into this and what you do, because that's what we do, we provide that platform to give people that knowledge, they were in shock that there's groups like yourselves doing. In fact, you were doing it longer than almost anybody. Everyone now is spiraling now after you. You guys were the very first that I could recall publicly doing what you guys do. Everybody came after. So this craze you see with television shows, paranormal shows, all these investigations, this is all coming and stemming off the heels of the Warrens and Tony and what they did for the community. So we owe you a gratitude of thanks.
Well, thanks, George. It's actually Ed and Lorraine were the pioneers. I came in later. I don't propose or profess to be as famous or as knowledgeable as either one of them, but they did teach me everything I know. So I was taught by the best. It's like, going to a prestigious Ivy League school for the paranormal. When you have teachers such as Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren, I remember going over Ed's house and Lorraine's house. I'd walk into the kitchen. I'd see Lorraine cooking or making a cup of tea, and I'd say, "Where's Ed? Where's Ed?" She said, "Oh, he's down in the museum. He's down in his office off the museum. Go see him." So I would walk down there. Sure enough, it would be deep into a book or looking at photographic slides that he took of a case or like I said, a paranormal book, or he'd be typing up a report. His whole being was investigating the paranormal and the occult and demonology to try to help afflicted families, because he, of course, was afflicted himself as a young man. From age 5 to 12, he lived in a haunted home. And that's what spawned him when he got out of the Navy. He told Lorraine, I'm going to find out if other people have had this kind of experience that I've had with these ghostly phenomena and these others that, and the ghosts I see in the closet come out and look at me, and the footsteps and the cold spots and the banging and the noises and the sounds. So he was frightened as a young boy, and he wanted to know when he got out of the U.S. Navy if other people had the same experiences. That's how he started, he and Lorraine.
Yeah. And I want to touch on that because it's important. I was in the same, like the way you explained, Ed, is what happened to me when I was going to school in Los Angeles, and I was living in this place, Tony, that I was having some very weird experiences. So I said, I got to look into this. Hence my exposure to this and the paranormal. Now, a lot of shows have been called out for doing fake things and trying to give it more of an entertainment value or try to get ratings and so forth. But that's not necessarily true for all investigators. At the end of the day, a real investigator's job is to help the client, the person that's in trouble. You go into the home. We don't charge. We never charged anything, not a dime. I learned that from Lorraine, by the way. Never charge. We do it as a gift to help those people in trouble. And whatever money we make is whether it's a book, whether you're speaking engagements, maybe donations here and there, but you never charge. So anyone who's charging you to go to their home to cast out anything spiritual is already a bad sign. So there's so much we learned about him. And I want to get into, first and foremost, a museum. Because on the travels with Lorraine and Ed, they picked up these objects that were cursed, that were possessed, and that were used in some rituals. Some not. Some of them were just haunted, whether it belonged to somebody that had a connection to it. Whatever it was, there was some kind of spiritual presence in the home or in the location they were at. So they had to be removed. And, Ed was very powerful with Lorraine, and they would bring it. And I was shocked when I heard they did it in their home where they lived. And I was like, is this for real? They're actually doing it in their home? And they would bring these things there. And after all these years, so many things were brought in there. And then being introduced to it, learning what everything was and where it came from. And yourself, you've said yourself, you bring somebody in once a month or something to do a prayer in the space as a protection. So I want to get into one of the first things, which is one of the most scariest and popular items in your museum. So popular that they made a movie about it. And before we even get into that, I got to say this, Tony, and I don't know if you remember, I went to a movie in Toronto called Insidious. This movie was at a film festival, and it was the director of Saw. I saw the movie, and they used a character named Lorraine. And I was disturbed by this because I'm like, are they making reference to Lorraine Warren? Because the story had underlined tones. This was in Toronto, and I was lucky to go to this premiere because the director was there. So they said, do you have any questions? And obviously I raised my hand. I go, did you base this character on Lorraine Warren? And everyone looked at me like, what's this guy talking about? And the director looked at me and he goes, actually, we know of Lorraine, and, there may have been some influences in the stories and so forth and so forth. Well, Tony, you could attest to this. I got home, and the first thing I did was contact Tony. And I said, Tony, they just made a movie called Insidious. They used Lorraine's name. I think they're going and they're using her stories. And you're like, what? Let me get a hold of her. And God works in mysterious ways because now you're working with that director and they're actually creating movies on those stories. God bless you. That is so amazing. Let's talk about Annabelle. This movie made history. Everyone's talking about it.
Yes.
And it's based on Annabelle. So please take us through the experience with the movie and Annabelle.
Yeah. Well, James Wan, the director you're speaking about, who made Insidious and Saw, and some other great movies too, But when he knew of Lorraine and of Ed, and he wanted to make some movies that were horrible movies. In other words, horror movies, not horrible, but horror movies. And he wanted to make movies that were exciting but not gory. And he wanted to make them true as he could to Ed and Lorraine's characters. And I met James on the set of The Conjuring 1. Fantastic gentleman. I have to say he's a gentleman. He's young. He's probably around your age now, George. He's probably around 40, some odd, in the mid 40, maybe he's not even that. But he's a great guy, and he's super, super talented. And they had us on the set to make The Conjuring. But let's talk about Annabelle for a second. The Annabelle movies, of course, The Conjuring, at the beginning of The Conjuring, does have a reference to Annabelle. The first thing you see in The Conjuring is the Annabelle doll, the movie Annabelle doll, not the real one. That's the first thing you see. And they talk about the two girls that are in the apartment. And that was true. Those two girls in the apartment were two nurses from Hartford, Connecticut in 1970-71 who received a doll, a Raggedy Ann doll, a regular Raggedy Ann doll as a gift from one of the nurse's mothers as a birthday gift. Because the nurse, she was about 27, 28, she liked dolls. So, of course, the mother gave her the doll. She bought it in a thrift store. Gave her the doll, and almost immediately, they started to treat this doll, because it was pretty large, it's about 2.5 feet high. They started to treat the doll almost like a real person. She'd carry it around with her like a little child. She'd put her on the couch. She'd bring her to the breakfast nook. She'd talk to her. She wouldn't call her by name because at that time she didn't have the name Annabelle. She was just the doll, and they didn't have a name for her. But what happened was one day they came home from work, and the doll seemed to be in a different location. And the nurses kind of scratched their heads and said, well, maybe we're just imagining it. The next night, they made a point of keeping the doll in one location with her legs uncrossed. And the two nurses came home from their shift at night at about 12 o'clock. The doll has been shifted in a different location, and her legs were now crossed, not uncrossed like they were. Now the nurses are saying to themselves, wait a minute, maybe the manager of the apartment, the superintendent, maybe he's playing a joke on us. Maybe he's doing it, and he wants us to get scared. So they would set up things like put a piece of Scotch tape on the entry door on the bottom, and they would put the rug just in a certain way to see if anybody had gotten into the apartment when they were on their shift. They come home, everything's intact except the doll has again been moved. So now the nurses are kind of scratching their heads because one day, I believe it was Donna who found a piece of parchment paper under the bed, and written in crayon was the words, help me. And they didn't have any parchment paper in the house. They never bought any. They didn't have any crayons, but yet there was a parchment paper with a note on it. So they were a little freaked out by that. The kicker was one day they had Annabelle at it wasn't Annabelle then, but that's what we're going to call her now. They had the doll at the breakfast nook, and the two flimsy arms of the doll, as you can see in the picture, they're little rags. They're like raggy hands. They're not strong or stiff. They levitated onto the breakfast table. Wow. Both arms. And the nurses, not being scared for some reason, I don't know about you, I'd be a little nervous right there. They looked at each other, and one of the nurses said to Donna, she said, I think that doll's trying to tell us something. And Donna says, yeah, I think so too. And the other one says, well, I know a psychic. Maybe we'll have a seance and find out what she wants to tell us. And they agreed, yeah, let's have a seance. So they called in their friend who was a psychic, and they did have that seance. And at the seance, the psychic says, I'm getting the thought of a small girl that was outside this apartment complex, and she got hit by a car, and she was killed outside this apartment. And her name is Annabelle, and she's in your doll. That's what she told the nurses. Her name is Annabelle, and she's in your doll. Now, I happen to know, and Ed told me too, that God would never allow a human spirit, especially a young girl, to enter and reside inside of a doll. It was not Annabelle inside the doll. It wasn't not a young girl who raised her arms onto that breakfast nook. But the girls didn't know that. They kept treating the doll like, oh boy, this is really a spirit inside that doll. And they really treated her like a human being. And then what happened was Lou, who was the fiance of Donna, he was sleeping on the couch one day, and the doll was on the other end of the couch.
Yeah.
And Lou is sleeping on the couch. He wakes up with a start, and he grabs his neck, and he says, oh, I had the worst nightmare. And Donna said, what's the matter with you, Lou? He said, I just had the worst nightmare that doll over there was crawling up my leg and got to my neck and was trying to strangle me to death. And he was sweaty, and his heart was pounding. And he runs over to the doll that's on the end of the couch, picks up the doll, throws it across the room, and says, that's just a Raggedy Ann doll. That can't hurt anybody. When he said that, 7 psychic wounds appeared on his body, 4 on his chest, 3 on his stomach. They were like slash marks that came through his T-shirt. You can see the blood coming through. The nurses said, wait a minute, that cannot be good. That cannot be an Annabelle young girl inside that doll. And that's when they called Ed and Lorraine out. And Ed and Lorraine did interview the girls, just like you saw in the movie. And they had to do an exorcism of the house and over the girls to try to exorcise what was there. But the girl said, look, we don't want that doll anymore. What should we do? And I said, well, I'll take it and put it in my museum. And that's what he did. He took the doll and brought it back to his museum with problems on the way because his car was stalling out. that never had a problem before. It was jerking around left to right on the road. Ed had to finally stop and sprinkle holy water on it and make the sign of the cross over the doll. So the doll is real. The doll has done other things too, which, if we don't have time, I won't get into that. We'll talk about other things, but it bothered a priest. It bothered a detective. And a young man who came on a motorcycle was, after taunting the doll and mocking the doll and saying, this isn't real, this is a joke, this is a bunch of BS, he got on his motorcycle with his girlfriend and was killed on the way home. He hit a tree. Now, was it the doll? Was it Annabelle that did all this? No one's going to ever know for certain. But why would you want to mess with it? Why would you want to take that chance? It's like if I handed you a revolver and there was one bullet in it and I spun the cylinder and said, go ahead, put it to your head, George. There's probably no bullet in there. And you go, yeah, maybe not. And you shoot yourself and you kill yourself. Why would you take the chance? So that is the quick story of Annabelle, who still resides in the museum. And there was a rumor that she had escaped, and that's not true. It was all over the internet that she escaped. And really quickly, I'll tell you why the rumor started. Was the girl who played the mother or the wife in Annabelle, the first Annabelle, her real name, the actress's name is Annabelle Wallace. And she was making a movie with Tom Cruise recently, maybe a year ago. Or not even that. And during the interview with Chinese television, or the Chinese picked it up, they said, well, how was it working with Tom Cruise? And she said, oh, it was great because he jogs every day. And I had the opportunity to go run with Tom. And the Chinese translation was, she said, it was not Annabelle runs, but Annabelle escapes. So someone picked that up and said, Annabelle escaped the museum? And then the whole thing just blew up from there, but it wasn't true. She never left.
It's mind-blowing how one thing could lead to another. And I didn't believe that, by the way, when I heard that rumor. I was, no, that wouldn't happen. Tony has great security. And who, I mean, even a villain is smart enough to know not to go into a haunted museum with demonic artifacts. I mean, you got to be smart enough. And what value really does a haunted doll have? I mean, it's going to bring, horrifying things to your life and negativity. Why would you want negativity in your life? That robber probably wouldn't have made it anywhere past 3 or 4 blocks. I mean, people are insane.
I've had offers for the doll, believe it or not. Now, were they legitimate offers? Who knows? Because I said no. Yeah. But the first offer I ever got was, do you want to sell Annabelle? I said no. And the person wrote back and said, well, now, this is probably a bunch of BS. They wrote back and said, well, I'm authorized to give you $1 million US. I said, well, she's not for sale. And they wrote back and said, how about $2 million? And I said, look, the doll is not for sale. It'd be so reckless of me to let that doll into the world. Because I learned from Ed. You don't do stuff. Money's the root of all evil, right? So you're gonna give a doll away or for money to someone who could maybe cause havoc with it. Who knows what they're going to do with a doll? I don't know.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I know the doll is safe where it is. And people say, why don't you destroy the doll? No. Well, if I destroy the doll, it's like destroying a vessel, but you're not destroying the spirit that's within, that we think is trapped in that doll through ritualistic prayers, binding prayers that we do around the doll to keep her there. So if you know you got a tiger in a cage, why would you let it out? Yeah. So, why would you open the door? So by burning Annabelle, I'm releasing the spirit to go wherever it wants to go.
Correct. Yeah. And again, here's a picture of you with not the real Annabelle doll. Some of the pictures we're showing up are the character doll used in the movie, one of them, but which they actually gave you one to keep that was actually in the movie. This is the real doll right here, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. And you notice it's enclosed in a special case because there's protection prayers and we don't want its energy leaving that. Is that correct, Tony?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Because I have a lead investigator of mine, Dan Rivera. And he's been working with me for well over 10 years now. But he's also a craftsman. He knows how to build cabinets and structures. And Chris Galoran, who's also a lead investigator, Chris Galoran. And so Dan said, look, why don't I make a good case for this thing? Because that other case that's built into the wall, we don't know much about if it's blessed or how the wood was. He goes, why don't we make something special that we know is going to kind of be an extra protection? And if we do have to move the doll around, we can move it in this portable case that's on wheels. So I said, okay, go ahead, Dan. So what he did is he took the wood and he went to a priest that's up
Yep.
the street from us at Our Lady of the Rosary. He went up to the priest, said, I need some holy water and I need some holy oil. So the priest, of course, gave it to him. And Dan mixed that into the stain that he applied to the wood. He mixed holy water, holy oil, and applied it to the wood surfaces inside and out. Then, behind Annabelle in the case, he cut out a cross. And on the two sides of the cabinet, he cut out a cross. So that's like the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And then on both sides, he has a plaque of St. Michael the Archangel with a prayer. And on the front, he has a blessed crucifix. And engraved inside the cabinet is the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, engraved in there. So we think that helps as far as protection, in addition to having a priest come in approximately once a month to bless the museum and to bless each object itself as a binding ritualistic prayer that we do.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Again, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard Tony speak on this experience with this doll. This is real, and this is just one of many stories that he's got. And, I'm not going to keep them all night, but there's a couple of stories particularly I want him to touch base on. And I want to give you guys an opportunity to meet Tony in person, live. There was an event that would happen almost every year during Halloween. And I went to one of them many years ago. And he's going to be doing one this year. And I put a link underneath the video where you could go to get information and buy your tickets. I highly suggest you purchase a ticket. You'll get to hear guest speakers. There'll be some vendors there. And there's a separate ticket that gets you into a room where some of the actual artifacts you'll be able to see. I know that I was discussing with Tony if one day it'd be possible to bring Annabelle to Toronto, Canada, maybe one day, locked up and everything, and we could maybe do a showcase and like a traveling museum of the Warrens in Toronto. So that's something we're looking at. But again, you'll have more details and information right underneath, and we'll talk about that. But I want to get to another story that's shocking to me. And I know that because, I also researched and dabbled in the occult. So it was important that I wanted you to share this because people need to understand the power of the supernatural, that how diabolical, how evil, and how powerful it is. Some people don't believe it, but you're going to tell a story about a particular, I wouldn't call it a doll. It's some type of creature that was created in a woods. And I'm going to put the picture up here to show you. And if you could just touch on this particular thing that really made a big influence on the museum and actually affected Lorraine. This right here.
Yeah.
Can you tell a story about this thing in your museum?
Yes, George. What that actually is a satanic worship idol. It's a satanic worship idol. The opposite of looking at a religious statue of, say, the Blessed Virgin or Saint Michael or even Jesus Christ. It's the opposite of that. It's not meant for good. It's meant for evil purposes. And what happened was a young deer hunter, about 22, 23 years old, in the wooded area of Sandy Hook, Connecticut, back in about 1991. He was with a bow and arrow looking for deer, to hunt deer. Now, Ed doesn't advocate hunting. I didn't advocate hunting and I don't like people who hunt, really. There's no need for it. But let's not talk about that. Let's just say he was hunting deer and with his bow and arrow. And he's walking through the wooded area. He kind of gets lost in his pathway, this young man. And then he sees this idol that you just shown. He sees it on a grotto of rocks, in a circular grotto of rocks, about 2 feet off the ground. And then above that is the idol, which is about 6 feet tall. And he looks at it and he immediately becomes disturbed. He says, I had a weird feeling about this thing. He sat in front of the idol, not knowing what to do, his heart racing. He's confused. He said he had a sense of dread. He said to himself, this isn't good. Whatever that thing is, I don't like it. He stands up and he says, I got to get out of here. Starts to walk away from this idol. As he's walking down this pathway, now remember, he's lost. He's walking down this pathway, and suddenly, out of nowhere, it's deserted woods. Out of nowhere, a gentleman dressed all in black from head to toe, like a black suit, snow white hair, snow white, shortly cropped beard. The man was about 70, 75 years old, walking step for step. He just joined this young man, step for step, walking with him through this pathway. Now the kid is really kind of freaking out, saying to himself, what is this guy? Who is this man? To himself. He said, I got so frightened when this man appeared. I wanted to take an arrow out of my quiver and just grab it and go like this and just stab the guy in the chest. I was so frightened. He said, but I didn't do that, of course. I was able to muster enough nerve to say, hey, how do I get out of here? Now the man who's walking straight ahead, step by step, side by side, with this man, never looking left and right, with this young man, doesn't talk, doesn't say anything, doesn't even look to the young man. He just points to the right, like this. He points to the right and then walks off into the distance. Now the kid is really freaking out. He gets home, he says to his buddies, I don't know what to do, you guys. I just had the weirdest experience. And he tells them. And they said, well, look, right in Monroe, which is the next town over, there's Ed and Lorraine Warren. Why don't you give him a call? He's in the book. And it was in the book. Calls Ed up. Ed says to the young man, do you think you can find that spot again, son, where the idol was, where the statue was? The kid was calling the statue. He says, yeah, I think so, Mr. Warren. And he joins Ed on the street, and they walk into the woods with Ed and Lorraine. They walk into the woods. The kid does find the idol. And as he's walking, he tells Ed about the man. And Ed says, I know who the man was, and I know what that thing is that you were talking about. That's a satanic worship idol. And that man you saw in the woods was a high priest in a satanic cult, a very, very dangerous person. And the kid says, well, I don't want anything to do with it. Ed says, I'm going to take that idol and put it in my car and bring it to the museum. It doesn't belong in those woods. He takes it back. He puts it in the museum. In fact, they showed it to me that same day that he put it in. And for 2 or 3 days, nothing was wrong. Everything was perfectly normal. On the third day, Ed's out in the driveway, and he's changing the wipers on his car, the windshield wipers. He looks over, he sees Lorraine watering some flowers about 25 feet away from him. It's in the summertime. She waves, hi, honey, let's go eat after this. And he goes, yeah, no problem. And then he goes back to doing his wipers. He just happens to glance back again a few moments later, and he doesn't see Lorraine. He looks farther up the driveway down into the yard, and he sees her in a semi-fetal position, unconscious. No hose in her hand, water, that's gone. He runs over to her. Lorraine, what's the matter? She doesn't answer. He calls the police and the ambulance. They come out. They take her to St. Vincent's Hospital in Bridgeport, Connecticut. For 3 days, Lorraine was in and out of consciousness, like someone took a bat and hit her in the head, or a ball and hit her in the head, and she had the flu. That's all I could describe it as, because I went to see her the following day, me and Judy. She couldn't talk to us. She couldn't answer questions. She didn't say hello. She just kind of looked at us and then fell back to sleep. The doctors did all kinds of tests. I said, Ed, what's wrong with Lorraine? He said, the doctors still haven't told me. I don't know. He said they can't find anything wrong. The third day, she snaps out of it. She's perfectly fine. She gets released from the hospital and everything's okay. So I went to see Ed that day and Lorraine. I said, Ed, did the doctors ever tell you what happened with Lorraine? He said, nope, but I know what happened. I said, what? He says, that that GD idol and that guy in the woods. He was that satanic priest. And he told me his name because he knew the guy from the description. He goes, it was him. I go, what do you mean it was him, Ed? He goes, it was a warning to me. He messed with Lorraine as a warning to me because I stole his idol from the woods. That's exactly what happened. And he said he didn't mess with me personally because he knows that I have vast knowledge of reverse ceremonial magic, and we kind of cancel each other out. He's got power on the evil side. I got power on the good side. So he just did that to Lorraine as a warning to me. So that actually is the story of that idol. It was a satanic worship idol, worshipped by a satanic cult in the woods.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard a testimony that these satanic dolls, this worship, it summons very negative energy, demonic energy, supernatural power that physically hurt Lorraine Warren. It put her in a hospital. It knocked her out because he was dabbling in things. Now, remember what Tony just said, that Ed had this supernatural power. He's a devoted Catholic, I believe. And, he was in church. He prayed. He was the real deal. And back then, it's interesting. Back then, he was preaching. There wasn't enough spiritual warfare in the church. They weren't teaching you enough. I remember him saying that many, many, many years ago before he passed, that they weren't teaching you enough about spiritual warfare. And look, these are the type of things that happen when you're not aware, know how to anoint, know how to purify yourself, how to protect yourself, and now to seal this circle of evil and keep it away from you. It is a horrible, horrible thing. So these things exist. Haunted items that are possessed with demonic souls, spirits, energies, used in spiritual warfare, used in satanic rituals. This is all very real, ladies and gentlemen. And someone was saying in the chat, was she involved with the Amityville? Yes, the Amityville horror was based on one of her investigations. Really quickly, before we go to break, Tony, if you could just touch on that investigation, because that was the first one that blew the lid and became a phenomenon.
Yeah, that's what made Ed and Lorraine actually more famous than any other case. Basically, is 1975. They got a call, early 76. About March, they got a call from Channel 5 News in New York City. Marvin Scott from Channel 5 called up and said to Lorraine, who answered the phone, "We'd like you to come out and investigate a house in Amityville, Long Island." And he briefly said what was going on, and he hung up the phone with Lorraine. And this is how naive they were back then. I shouldn't even say naive, because it wasn't the Amityville horror back then. It was just another house. She hung up the phone and said, "Ed, we have to go to Amityville." She says, "Where is that, Long Island?" And she said, "Where is that, New Jersey?" And Ed laughed. He goes, "No, Amityville's in Long Island." And so they just drove the next day to Long Island, met with George Lutz at a pizza place about 5 blocks from the Amityville house. And while they sat there, Lorraine and Ed, speaking to George Lutz, Ed looked at George and said, "Mr. Lutz, can you tell me what happened in your house?" And George Lutz looked at Ed and went like this, "You know." He pointed, "You know." And Ed looked at George Lutz and said, "No, Mr. Lutz, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you the question." I guess he thought Ed was a psychic and not Lorraine. He must have thought it was a psychic. And he said, "Just tell me what happened." And then he repeated it. He says, "You know." Ed says, "Well, look, why don't we just get the keys to your house and we'll all go over to the house and check it out." George Lutz said, "I'm not going." He stood up, put his hand in his pocket, grabbed the house keys, handed them over to Ed and said, you guys go. I'm not going." He said, "Just do me a favor, Ed. In the drawer in such and such a room, there's the deed to the house. Just get that for me, would you?" He would not go back in the house, George Lutz, because of the phenomena that was occurring in that house. A year before, approximately 1 year before, Ronald DeFeo Jr. killed every member of his family in that house on November 14th by taking a high-powered Marlin rifle, 375 caliber, I believe, and went through the house. 3:15 in the morning, he woke up, went through the house, and shot his 2 sisters, his 2 brothers, and his mom and dad in the back of the head. And they were found all on their stomachs. That's another weird part. And Ronald DeFeo, who passed away recently, Jr., who passed away, he was so disturbed or something in his mind that he just went to work the next day as if nothing happened with his dead family in the house. He just went to work and just worked. But things that happened in that house were more terrifying to Lorraine than anything else. She said when she was walking through the house, just a sense of evil she felt. When Marvin Scott and Channel 5 were following her through the house, Marvin Scott looks at Lorraine. He says, "Lorraine, you feel anything?" And she turned around to Marvin Scott and said, "This is the closest to hell that I ever want to get." And she really did say that, because she told me that later. That was the closest to hell she'd ever want to get. It was the sense of evil that was in the house.
Yeah.
George Lutz and Kathy would wake up sometimes 2 inches from the ceiling. They would levitate off their bed.
Wow.
Things that would happen in that house that they don't describe. But what makes people think it's a hoax? A lot of people say, well, that's a hoax. What makes people think it is the book by Jay Anson, The Amityville Horror. He embellished. He didn't explain. Mm-hmm. In other words, let me just give you a quick example. In part of the book, he says that when George looked at the staircase exploded before his eyes. It blew up, and all the spindles from the staircase just went scattered.
Yeah.
Well, when the investigators went in the house later, the staircase was perfectly fine. So they're saying, well, that was a hoax. They were making all this story up. If Jay Anson had described it correctly, then it wouldn't be taken that way. He should have said, through telepathic hypnosis, George Lutz saw the staircase explode. An image was given to George through whatever entities were in that house to scare him, showing the staircase blowing up, even though it didn't, in fact, blow up. Yeah. What that does, too, it makes George look foolish. When he goes, hey, the staircase just blew up. Come here and look. And you look, and the staircase is perfectly fine. You think George is a kook. Yep. So that's what the demonic wants to do. They want to trick you. The slime coming down the walls, telepathic hypnosis. But it happened to them.
Yeah.
So that's why if the book was written by someone who knew about the paranormal, it wouldn't be taken as a hoax.
1,000,000%. And that's important that we make reference to that. Again, this show is a platform to bring to the forefront the type of things that happen in the supernatural realm. You know, we talk about the occult, the paranormal. We talk about these rituals that happen. This is all real things. And I agree with Tony that if it would have been done by a proper investigator, they would have explained exactly what's going on. You hear things, you see things, maybe not really happening, but their senses, nightmares, things that happen, and these are all warnings to you, of course. Get out of the house, don't be here, or it could be an infestation, a beginning of possession, depending on what you did. We're going to get into that a little bit more. Of course, we have Tony just for a little bit more, but we're going to take a short commercial break. Want to thank Mike for joining us. JS Pop is with us. Angie's with us. Tara's with us. Ivy's with us. We thank you all for supporting us. It's a great privilege to have you here on a Friday night. When we come back, Tony will explain briefly how to cleanse your home, how to bless it and purify it. And of course, he'll share maybe one of his scariest stories. And then in closing, discuss how you could get tickets to come to his big event for Halloween. You'll get to be a part of it. You'll get to see some of these actual possessed items in real life, ladies and gentlemen. It's an amazing experience. And I might even be there myself. And it's going to be quite exciting. So we thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome to the Reveal Report. What is it?
They have done everything possible to destroy us.
What are they talking about? They obviously want to implement a brand new curriculum.
The Reveal Report, Fridays, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, only on Real Deal Media.
Welcome back to the Reveal Report right here on Real Deal Media. I'm George Iceman, your host for another beautiful Friday night. Big thanks to everybody joining us. JS Pop, once again. Aaron, thank you so much. Carmen Smith, how are you, Carmen? Thank you for joining us. Maybe you guys could follow Carmen on Twitter. Carmen is an amazing human being trying to get the word out, speaking of the word of God, and we thank her for joining us today. Maybe we'll get her as a guest on the show. Again, for those that are wondering where Jessie is, she is taking a little bit of time off from doing any interviews whatsoever with people. We will keep you up to date as we get it. We ask you all to keep her in your prayers. Take a moment and give her some love, because we hope her to be back very, very soon. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm being joined by a gentleman who is absolutely incredible in the world of the paranormal. I have so much respect for him, and not just for what he does. He's actually a really good guy, because in this business, you don't meet a lot of really cool people. So I had a great time when I had him in Toronto. Love to bring him back again. And he is probably the guy you want to talk to in the world of the paranormal, because he was trained, in my professional and personal opinion, by the best on the planet. If you're going to learn from Lorraine and Ed Warren, you have a degree in demonology and paranormal like nobody else. They've seen it. They've been to it. There is even a relic that Lorraine has that is absolutely incredible. I'm going to ask Tony about it. Without further ado, once again, our guest for today, Mr. Tony Spera.
Thanks, George. You're probably talking about the relic of the cross, of the crucifix. Yep. With the.
If you could touch on that relic, give it to Lorraine, please.
She has a crucifix. It's about 5 inches high, maybe 4 inches wide. It's made out of metal, but it opens up. It slides open, and there's a true piece of the cross in the head of that cross, of that crucifix, with documentation that came from the Vatican with it. She took it everywhere she went. If she went on a case, she definitely had it with her. When Ed fell ill, she had it next to Ed on his bed, in the bed, all the time he was ill. It's a powerful thing. You know, relics, spiritual things like that are blessed, holy objects, do have power. Just like when we talk about objects of satanic origin or black witchcraft, they have power too, but their power is not for good, it's for evil. But holiness is the key. It's the faith that you hold. It's a reminder. A relic or a medal is a reminder of the power of God. We are all protected by God if we choose to be protected by God. You know, God gave us all free will. That's why there's all kinds of things that happen in the world that we don't wish wouldn't happen, because he gave us that freedom to do what you want. He's not going to force you to love him, force you to follow him, force you to believe in him. You do what you want. That's called free will, and he gave it to us. But people who do believe in God, and it's Good Friday, Easter's coming up, where he rose, arisen, he is our protector. When we go on an investigation, our team, and I want to introduce you to my team someday, but yeah, we have a really, really good team. We have a bishop on the team. His name is Plato Angelakis. He's from Canada.
Wow.
He's actually a bishop with the Mexican Catholic Church, but he lives in Canada. He's Greek. His name is Plato Angelakis. Sister Kia, who works with him, she's up in Canada too. I don't think they're in Toronto. I don't know exactly. They may be somewhere close though. And then there's Mike Salerno, who's very spiritual. Jimmy Pettinino, who a lot of you guys know as Mr. Haunted. Rick Clark, fantastic guy. Worked with Ed, Jimmy and Rick. Jim Pettinino, Rick Clark worked with Ed and Lorraine and me. Eric Vital, he was on the show Ghost Loop. He's part of our team. He's a tech guy. Then we have Anthony and Dina Holmes. They're spiritual advisors to us. Eric Morin. And we have our lead investigators, which have been with us, and we have a partnership going now for the Paracon that we're having, is Dan Rivera, who's an expert in Santeria.
Oh.
Yeah, he's an expert at that because he lived with it when he was growing up.
I want to actually talk about that, but go ahead, finish.
And Chris Galorin, who is a police officer, has been for over 20 years. We like Chris to come with us on all cases if we can, because He's the most logical one. He's the one who will look at it with a very discreet eye. He won't be tainted by anything. He wants to see it. He wants to feel it, hear it. He wants the truth to come out. So when he interviews the families, he knows how to do the interview in such a way that we could tell if the family is making up some story, if part of their stories don't jive. So Chris Galore is a big help when it comes to investigating on an individual house. And Dan, of course, he's that expert. He doesn't like to admit it.
Yeah.
But he's psychic. He doesn't like to admit it, but he has he's more empathic than anybody on the team, except for maybe Kia, except for Sister Kia. She's empathic too. But Dan also, he makes all our merchandise. You're going to be able to buy Warren's t-shirts and stuff when he comes to Paracon. You're going to meet all these guys. They're all going to come. Hopefully you're all going to make it.
Yeah.
And we're going to treat you guys well. And it's going to be a fantastic. We have over 40 vendors. Over 40, maybe 50 vendors.
Wow.
8 speakers. We're going to have some really good speakers, and we'll put up on the website.
Yes.
And I just think it's going to be a great time. We've already sold we've sold over 500 tickets already, and it's not until October. So if people want to get their tickets, George, you don't have to pay. Because somebody told me that your middle name is Crime, and crime doesn't pay. Yeah. So you're not going to be paying. You and your guests will come on us.
Blessings.
On us, and we'll take you out to dinner, whatever. So, that's our team. And when we go out, we do it professionally. We do it with faith. We put on our suit of armor.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to be a paranormal investigator, anybody can go and try and do it, but you have to do it for the right reasons. It's not for money. If you do it for money, you're going to fail. You have to do it because you want to help people. Like police officers don't join the force to make money. I mean, when I joined the police department, it was a long time ago, George, 1972. If I told you how much I made an hour, you'd start laughing. But I'm going to tell you how much I made an hour. And so tell me if I did it for money. When I joined the police department, you know what the salary was? $3.75 US an hour.
Wow.
I would make $7,800 a year. That's how much I made in 72. Did I do it for money so I can go out and buy myself a Porsche or a Ferrari? No. I did it because I wanted to help people. People who join the paranormal realm do it. They have some kind of an innate sense of, I got to help people. Justice. I got to help people from torment in the spiritual realm. Yeah. So that's what Ed did. He would help people for free. Like you said, we don't charge. We don't charge it. We've never charged for an investigation. So if people start to get like a little upset, like, oh, you're charging for the Paracon, or you're charging for this, yeah. I mean, we have to live, right? We have to, when we go on a case and it costs us money, it's out of our pocket. You know, we can drive for hours, spend all our gas, buy our own lunch, go to the house, help the people, maybe spend 2 or 3, 4 days there. They don't even offer you a cup of coffee, but we're still there. So I don't want to hear anybody say, well, you got paid for a Paracon, you got paid. Yeah, we have to fund ourselves. Yeah. So what else do you want to ask me, George?
Anything else? I wanted to talk to you about that particular thing in cases, because, you'll get tons of messages and I will get tons of messages. So there's kind of a criteria that we go through to find out what's worth a case. What does it take for me to go out of my way and actually bring a team to your home? Do we set up cameras? Are we just going there to analyze the first day? And then if it's what we think it is, then on another day, we schedule with you, we bring in a whole team, we set up cameras and so forth to capture that. If you could just maybe take people along with, what do you look for in order to go to their home to analyze and do an investigation?
Well, basically the way you set that up is perfect. The way you said it. We get a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, a lot of requests for help. Well, you have to qualify the people. It's like a salesman. You have to qualify. Are they qualified to get your services? If somebody calls you up and says, I want to buy a Chevrolet Corvette, they're $100,000. And do you make any money? How much do you make? Well, I make about $100 a week. They can't afford it. So they're not legitimate. They don't really want to buy the car. So the thing is, on a case, we analyze what the people are saying to us. If they say that they've been into black witchcraft and all these things, and then things started to happen and they're repenting, we'll look closer at that because now they're trying to better themselves. If we can basically tell by the responses we get to certain questions, if they're doing it for several reasons other than the true reason, which is they need help. If they're doing it because they want to, A, be famous and get a book made or get a movie made, well, you can tell. If they do it, B, because they want to see if they can fool us and see if they can make us, because they're a skeptical group maybe calling us and wanting to see if we'll go out there on some whim and they made up a whole story, well, I could tell that too. You ask certain questions and you get certain responses. Some responses are specific where you should get that answer. If you don't get that answer, then something's wrong. Like if you say, okay, tell me what happened. And they say, well, geez, I was sleeping. I was in my bed. And all of a sudden, this big green monster started to hover over my bed. I know I was awake. I wasn't sleeping. And he had these red eyes and these fangs. And he was dripping all this green slime onto my face. But maybe it wasn't a nightmare. I think I had a nightmare, but I'm not sure. And then you say, well, what did you do next? What happened after that? Well, I just, I went back to sleep, I had to go back to sleep. Who would go back to sleep after experiencing something like that? There's certain things by their responses that they give you, they're making a story up or they're exaggerating it. Mm-hmm. So a trained investigator like all of us on the team would know that. And you'd ask, like Chris Galoran would ask that question several different ways. And if you got a consistent answer, then maybe they're legit. So it's a scale that you weigh it on because you can't help everybody. You can help people over email as much as you can or by phone. Sometimes, though, they're so frightened that you have to try to go out there and talk directly to them and experience the house yourself and try to gather some evidence. And the reason you're going out there anyway, George, to gather the evidence is if it is in fact demonic in nature, you need to gather the evidence for the clergy. Because I can't exorcise a house. I could do a simple blessing of a house, and so could you. But to do a formal exorcism or a formal blessing of a house, you need clergy. You need someone who's ordained, an ordained clergy person, man or woman. So basically, that's what we do. We qualify people by certain questions that we ask. And if they have generally accepted answers by us, then we know they're legit and how frightened they really are. And if they've ever had it happen before, or if a lot of people say, I'm not a kook, I'm very religious. And then they'll go on to talk to me in a sensible manner. And then I'll get on the phone with them. If they really sound sensible, then you're speaking with someone who's not trying to snow you, it's not trying to get over on you.
Yeah.
But there are people who do, skeptical societies you got to be careful of.
Yeah.
They'll try to have you believe something. You'll go out there and they'll make up a whole story hoping that you'll say, yeah, there's something here. So they can go on a blog and say, we just call the most preeminent organization for paranormal research. And we fooled them like you wouldn't believe. They're a bunch of kooks. They're charlatans. They can't even tell what's real from not real. You have to worry about that, George, because people will do that to you. Non-believers will do that to you. So, but we know we can sort those people out.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. I've learned so much from you guys, and especially Lorraine. I would sometimes, poor Lorraine, she would have to put up with me. I'd sometimes talk to her for an hour, 20 minutes. I'd be sitting on the patio, and when she gets started, she just keeps going, and it's amazing information. I wanted to remind everybody, the people involved in paranormal investigation, especially Tony's team, who is very elite, that high force team there. People from all kinds of walks of life. I remember going to meet Lorraine and Tony, and I think there was somebody on your team. I forget his name. I do apologize. He was a police officer, part of a special squad, a special unit, who was discussing warning signs and what you need to watch out for, because his team worked on occultic cases, the cases with the demonic sacrifices and practices of magic like Santeria and so forth. And he went to a deep story about how his pet died or his grandmother got sick, and all because it was going after some Jamaican drug lords that were practicing the occult. And they got away. They legitimately in court got away. So this is not a joke. You have police officers, you have lawyers, you have people from all, look, Tony's a former police officer. There's so many different people in walks of life involved on the front lines trying to help you in this spiritual battle. Can you just touch base briefly on there actually is police and confirm with people that they do work on these type of things?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we've got Chris Galoran, he's on our team. Chris, who's been on the police department for over 20 years. I was on the police department years ago, of course. We had a guy, Frank, who was on the team years ago. Roger, he was on the police department in Bristol years ago. A lot of police officers, a lot of professional medical staff kind of people. We had a doctor one time, Dr. Joe, and there's a doctor that would always go with Ed. Years ago, he was one of Ed's best friends, Dr. Anthony Giangrasso, who unfortunately passed away. He was one of the nicest guys, George, in the world. Anthony Giangrasso, he was a medical examiner for Fairfield County. He would accompany Ed on a lot of cases. So you would get the medical aspect too, besides the police and firemen and security officers would come, ambulance workers. Those kind of people are drawn. You know why? You know why, George? Because they like to help people.
Yeah.
When you get people who like to help others, they're drawn to helping people in any way they can. Now, having said all that, you have to have faith. If you are a non-believer in God, if someone came to me and said, "Hey, boy, I'd love to see a ghost. Can I go on a case with you? Or can I learn from you?"
Yeah.
And I say, "Well, do you believe in God?" If they say no, then I scratch that person right off. Nope, sorry, you can't come. Why? I'm a good guy. Yeah, you're a good guy and everything, but you don't believe in God. And our whole team, our whole theme of what we do is faith-based. Our protection is our belief in the Lord.
Yes.
You know, why would we have you come in on a case and you don't believe that the Lord can help you or can help the family? Why would we do that? That's like, bringing a bank robber to investigate a burglary.
Yeah.
Or a robber you're not going to do that. So we have specific parameters. We want logical people, police, firemen, ambulance, doctors, or any person who's logical and believes in God and believes that God can protect them from any evil. And God can. If it weren't for God, this whole world would be just on fire. I mean, everything would be gone because the devil's influence is everywhere. Remember, there's a balance in life. Everything has a balance, a positive and a negative. Everything in life does. Mathematics, nature, positive balance, nature and negative, yin and yang, and that good and evil. That's also a balance.
Yeah.
God gave us that free will. That's why there's evil in the world. If God didn't give us free will and just made us all the same and all good people, okay, we're all robots, right? We all think the same, say the same stuff, like the same stuff. So God, in his infinite wisdom, said, well, what kind of a life would people enjoy if they can't have their own life? So he made people have their own life with their own free will. But he did come up with some commandments, some things he wants you to follow. And if you don't follow that, then you're following the wrong path. You're following the devil's path, not the Lord's. Now, no one's perfect. No, I know I'm not, George, not even close, but you try to adhere to as much as you can of these. And if you falter, you get up and you try to change your ways. If you steal something, you try to make amends and never steal again. So it's something that's built in. If a person is innately good, they have a good heart, and they strive to change themselves, then they can be with the Lord and they can go to heaven. But the people who take that other pathway, who never want to be saved and never want to acknowledge that God is real. I don't know about you, but I don't. Like Ed used to say to me, you want to be a turkey? Hang around with turkeys. You want to be an eagle? Fly with the eagles. Right?
It's so true, Tony. And there's even another thing that I learned growing up similar to that. It's you are the company you keep. Tell me
Yes.
who your friends are. I'll tell you who you are. You've heard that before. So
Yes.
I always try and surround myself with people smarter than me, people more successful than me, people that I could learn from. We're never
Yes.
too old to learn, and we
Right.
need to continue learning. So what you're saying makes so much sense. On that note, it's important to talk about protection and blessings and cleansing, because we're coming to the end of the show, and I want to just touch on that before you leave about anointing. The past few weeks, my guest Jessie Czebotar is talking about anointing oil and using it to anoint the land, anoint schools, cars, your shoes, anything you can in protection. Anoint it in the name of Jesus Christ, in the name of God Almighty, to take back that land, to close any portals to demonic entities coming into your life and into this world. Let's briefly talk about what's something they could do or what you like to do for a cleansing.
Well, I agree with with that premise, because you've heard of good vibrations, right? Good vibes, right? Good vibes go a long way into making a good life. Bad vibes are people who send out bad vibes, who send out negative energy. And you don't know who's attacking you with that negative energy and negative thoughts. So the more that you can protect yourself through God's will and God's grace by using holy oil, anointing like God does, and Jesus had anointing. To do that is protection. Your faith, your loving spirit, your kindness, all of that melds together into protection, because you're more vulnerable when you're not kind. You're more vulnerable when you're cruel. You're more vulnerable when you don't care about others. Because why are you more vulnerable? Because you're not doing God's work. God doesn't want you to be cruel to other people or animals. He doesn't want you to steal or be cruel or unkind or say unkind things to other people. That's not God's way, right? That's not God. So the more you do that, the less you're doing God's work and God's will. And you're doing more so any protection that you could use, be it through holy oil. I call it holy oil because mine would be blessed by a priest, or holy water, or relics or artifacts. That's your suit of armor. You have to have a belief system. People say, well, what do you mean a belief? Why do you have to believe in God? I never saw God. I never felt God. Well, if you want to see God, look in the mirror, because God created you. You want to see God, look at all your friends, look at everybody on the road, look at every single thing that your eye sees was somehow created by God, because God created man. Man created all of this. So that is part of it, is that you have to know that God is your creator, that you must fight against evil, because evil is always trying to encroach. It's always trying to encroach upon good people. It wants to change your mind. So that's why if you're vulnerable, it may attack. In other words, when I say vulnerable, you never think of God. You never pray. You never use relics or holy oils, or go to church, or say a prayer. You never think of God or thank God. That's a vulnerable person, because now this evil entity thinks perhaps I can get through to that person and change their mind and make them go the evil way. So the more you could do positivity wise is better for society, better for the world. And another thing too is, remember you just made that statement. Another statement is, what other people think of you is none of your business. If people think I'm a holy roller, fine, I don't care what you think. Or if they think, oh, he's a jerk because he does paranormal work, that's none of my business. I know what I'm doing. So I know what I'm doing. I know what kind of person I am. And God knows me. God knows my heart. I know my heart. I know that everything I do is selfless. It really is. It's not selfish. Selfish is, here's selfish. Oh yeah, I'll come out. Oh yeah, well, you could be around Saturday at 7:00. I'll come to your house and investigate, but I need $500.
Yeah,
and the person is tormented. The person is tormented, is calling out for help, and all you care about is money. So that is someone who, you know what I mean? That's
1,000%.
not. So I know who I am. I'm not going to charge money. We lose money. We, as a team, we lose money. All these guys come from all over to meet at one location, spending money on gas. Time is money, by the way. Abe Lincoln said that. Maybe it was Ben Franklin. Time is money. And so we use our time, our money, to help others. I mean, what's better than that? What's
No,
more holy
exactly.
than that? So, and same with you. You do the same thing. You don't charge for investigation. You're
No.
on the air. You're on the air right now. If you're making 50 cents, you're making a lot of money. You're not making any money, but
No.
you're doing it because you're not making any money. You're doing it because you want to help others. You're spreading the word, and that's the word of God. And that's, you want to spew hatred or you want to spew love? I mean, come on.
Tony, I can't agree with you more, and I gotta be upfront and real with you. Since I've turned to God, and I've gone His way. Now, sometimes I fight Him. Let's be honest. Sometimes God puts us on a path to do things, and I don't want to do it. I'm like, no, I'd rather do the easy thing, and I want to do this. And it's not what you want to do. It's what He calls you to do. And I have to say that it's hard and it's tough. It's a big pill to swallow and say, all right, I guess I'm gonna have to do it His way. But when I submit and do it His way, beautiful things happen in the world around me. Beautiful things happen to me. Again, this was created to bring knowledge to everybody, to talk to them and expose them to the supernatural realm, the evil entities that are here. Whatever is happening politics in the world right now, believe me when I tell you, it is a spiritual war behind it. It is good versus evil. That's what's happening. And you are all soldiers on the front line. We need you, not just politicians. There's some good guys, some bad guys. Most importantly, there's you, the people. You hold the power in your hands with prayer, with being positive, and manifesting good things into this universe. Do you agree with that, Tony, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. When evil becomes good and good becomes evil, that's a quote from the Bible. When evil becomes good and good is perceived as evil, and that's what's happening in the world today. I'm not going to get into my political views, but how many police officers do you know that are not conservative? So that's my answer to that. I'm conservative. I know what's right and what's wrong. I know what's good and what's evil, but it seems to be twisted in today's culture. So much so that I fear that our country, U.S., is on the verge of destruction. Actually, that's why we need the spiritual warfare too, because, like you said, all of these evil things that are being done are being pushed and forced by evil entities that we don't see. By evil entities. The people are influenced by demonic entities,
1,000,000%.
There's people talking in their ear that they can't hear them, but it's influencing their thought process to say that, it's okay to have an abortion up to the time of birth. I mean, but, that's why I say good is evil and evil is good. Like, we love kids. We want the kids who like, for instance, cross the southern border to all have, what they need. And take care of them, but we can kill your son and your daughter because you want them dead. I mean, so we're going to abort them. So there's all these things that are so messed up in the world today. It's scary. It's scary.
What you're seeing is the modus operandi for these diabolical satanic worshipers. Remember what Aleister Crowley, the famous occultist, said that many rock stars, politicians, and celebrities look to. He said, as above, as so below. Basically, upside down. Whatever you're seeing is the reverse. I mentioned it on my show many times that you're seeing the praise of Lucifer. He's telling you he's a good guy. Look at the TV show on Netflix, Lucifer. They want you to feel sorry and accept that. They want you to appreciate it. You have dating sites now coming on where the girl in the commercial is dating the devil. They want it to be acceptable. So this is implemented into you. It is important that you stay strong, that you stay positive, that you raise your human vibration and not allow it to take your mind, your body, and your soul. Eat healthy, stay healthy, get outside, get some fresh air, get some vitamin D, get some vitamin C, take zinc. There are important things to make your body good and healthy. This show right here, Lucifer, again, this is indoctrinating you into the system and telling you, hey, he's a cool guy. Well, I'm here to tell you Lucifer is not a good person. And we should not be praising him. We should be praising the Lord God Almighty. So on that note, Tony, let's go to our final thoughts. What are your final thoughts for tonight?
My final thoughts for tonight are always do right, always do good, always be kind to everyone you meet. Can you imagine if everybody loved one another, what kind of world we'd really have? If everybody was thoughtful and wanted for others what they want for themselves, how great that would be, right? Everybody wants comfort. Everybody wants love. Everybody wants protection. You know, like you said, you want to do good. You want to be good. You want to get closer to God. Do things to bring you closer to God. You want to be closer to the devil? Do things that bring you closer to the devil. In other words, don't pray. Be cruel. Be a jerk. Be selfish. That's all devil's work. Devil loves that. The devil loves it every time you swear. Every time you use the Lord's name in vain, the devil loves it. Every time you steal something or you cut somebody off and give them the finger, the devil loves it, because you think God would love that? No. God thinks, I haven't gotten over to my side yet. I wish he would change. He's not going to make you. Free will, remember. You're going to do what you want. Follow God's pathway. Be the best person you could possibly be. Do what's right. I mean, you know, we canceled Dr. Seuss in America, but we let Cardi D on the Grammy Awards do vibrations that would make a truck driver red in the face. But that's okay for a kid to watch. That's art. That's art. But you can't listen to or watch Dr. Seuss. That's perception of good being evil and evil being good. And that's in the Bible. And we're on our way to destruction if we don't change it.
To that, because it's so important. And I've talked about this on the show. Remember what he just said. What's good is evil, and what's evil is good. As above, as so below. It's reversing. Everything the occult does is reversed. Remember, the cross upside is upside down. The witching hour, 3 o'clock. People still, to this day, don't know the meaning of 3 a.m. Why is 3 a.m. the haunting hour? Well, 3 p.m. in the afternoon was the day that Jesus was crucified and he passed away. So they reverse it. It's a mockery. Everything is upside down what they're doing. Remember that. They're going to try and implement that. But you could fight this tyranny by staying positive, by raising your vibration. A lot of people are wondering, what can I do to help? Pray, anoint the land, anoint the schools, anoint the businesses, anoint government buildings, close the gates and portals to these demonic forces into our planet. We will survive. We will win, because it's predicted in Revelations. So be positive and stay sound of mind. I want to touch briefly on a special guest, Tony, that I'm going to having. You said you were, investigating Santeria, and Santeria is something really huge. It's a practice of witchcraft, and it's very evil, actually. And there is a gentleman that I was privileged enough to confirm to come on the show, Tony. I don't know if you're familiar with him. His name is John Ramirez. John is an ex-Satanist and high priest. He has been in the occult, and he was saved by Jesus Christ. This gentleman here gets over 1 million views on his videos, and he has confirmed that he is coming on this show on April the 23rd to discuss and talk about his testimony, how he was saved by God and how he used to work for Satan and do spells on people. But the one thing he said that's shocking, Tony, was he had difficult putting spells on Christians and Catholics. There was a ring of fire surrounding them, protected them by God. Isn't that incredible?
Incredible. I love it. Yeah, everybody should tune in and watch that show. I will.
Yeah, it's incredible. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to meet Tony and his beautiful team, these paranormal investigators, underneath the video, there is a link to this amazing event. You'll get to see them. There's a separate room to see some of the haunted artifacts. It's going to be sold out. I personally am going to be there, and I'll meet some of you people there that are going to come. It's going to be sold out. So here's your chance to get some tickets for this amazing show. If you like the show, you appreciate it, remember to like, subscribe. And again, any tips are much appreciated. I work strictly on tips because the show is free. So if you'd like to donate to me, go to paypal.me/George Iceman. Once again, that's paypal.me/George Iceman. Tony, with that being said, anything you want to say in closing?
Love yourself, love your neighbor, and love God.
I love it. Guys, we hope you have an amazing, happy Easter. We hope you have a great time. Give blessings and thanks to your family, your friends, to God Almighty. Say a prayer for Jessie Czebotar. And of course, we thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Friday night, 7:30, right here live. Remember, if you can, you could donate to me at paypal.me/George Iceman. I thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend. God bless.
was